This is our folks. You're all the music tech heads. You like gear. I like gear. We're all like in the same family, all these people in this room. You know, I go talk to a high school or something, it's just a bunch of kids. But you folks at this place, in this room, at this event, we are all one.
All right. Where do we start, Stewart?
Let's start at the beginning.
All right. I'm going to assume that most people...
Actually, let's cut to halfway through because there's like 60 years of shit to get through.
So I'm assuming most people here know quite a bit about you already. And are fans.
Anything you don't know, or I don't know, I'll just make up.
Yeah. So let's just a quick one. Let's talk about the beginning of the band, and then we'll leapfrog as you see appropriate. Okay? How did it start?
How did it start? Well, I was playing in a band called Curved Air, which was a prog rock band, and I joined the band as long after its heyday. But for me, it was a professional band, and I got my first professional drum set. You know, the first time a record company buys your drum set is kind of a threshold in the career of any musician. And I got my big bad Ludwig Perspex kit. Sounded like crap, but looked so cool. Big monster on the stage. And just about that time, it was the end of the hippie movement. It was the late 60s, 1968. And suddenly there was this punk movement going on in London where you didn't have to have an ex-member of some other band in your band to get a record deal. In fact, you didn't even need a record deal. And it was kind of a do-it-yourself ethos. Of course, the music sucked, but I kind of liked it because it was all high energy, expressing the rage that I actually did feel in my heart. And I was too young to be a hippie. The whole hippie thing had kind of expired by the time I came along. And there was a new thing that I could be at the front of, like a shark among minnows. And so, looking at those punk bands, like it said in the clip there, hey, I could do that. And so I started to try and assemble a punk band. And I remembered this guy I had seen maybe 6 months, a year earlier up in Newcastle. And he was playing in a kind of a jazz band, kind of a return to forever kind of thing. And the guy could play bass, and he could sing. But the most importantly, there was a golden ray of heavenly light descending upon his chiseled features. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna get that guy. And I was down in London, so I called up to Newcastle to the journalist who had taken me to that gig up in Newcastle, and said, look, that bass player and that guy had that name, whatever it was. Got his number, and he said, oh no, I know you, Copeland. I know you're all into that punk thing, and you're gonna break up Newcastle's best jazz band, and I'm not giving you his number. Thanks. So I think about that for an hour later. Screw it. Phil, look, come on. But he didn't pick up. His girlfriend picked up. Hello. Look, I was talking to Phil a minute ago. Could you give me the number, or you look up the number of that guy Sting in what was the band? Last Exit? Okay. And she gives me the number. And by the way, just to conclude that part of the story, Phil's been dining out on having created the Police ever since. So I call him up. And first words to him are, look, this doesn't involve your band, and I'm down in London. And at that time, Curved Air was a working band, and I had connections in London in the industry, and I had a fast way of talking. And so I persuaded him to come down to London. And he came down, and the rest is history.
Wow.
Oh, wait a minute. No, I'm not done yet. There's the Andy part. I said, come down to London. And he said, okay, how about Thursday? Sure, fine. Okay, click. Now I got to find me a band. I told him I had a band. Now I got to get one. And the only guitarist I knew was my friend Henry Padovani, who had recently dropped acid and cut his hair. And I had to shut him up about his great hero, Carlos Santana, fine guitarist. Don't mention that name when you're trying to start a punk band. But the acid fixed him up good. And he was a genuine punk. He hung out at all the clubs. He was the real thing. He was just this kid. He knew E, A, and D chords, but he could bang them out, you know. And so I called, hey, you know, got a band, got a guy coming down Thursday, come over. Thursday morning, I showed him like a G chord. Okay, now when I say the song goes E, D, 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 A, G, okay, that's a G right there. Okay, let me show you. Okay, like that. Okay, so Sting comes over and I say, yeah, here's the guitarist, Henry Padovani, and okay, let's go. And okay, G, Henry, A. Anyhow, I'm putting him down a little too harshly there because it's funny. But so we started a band with Henry Padovani, Stingo, and I. And we played the London clubs. We played mostly the clubs that the real punk bands, they didn't know how to hire a truck or get a PA or anything like that. And I did. I had a Rolodex. Some of you younger people here won't know that term, Rolodex. Not only is it before they invented iPhones, it's before they invented computers. Kids these days have no idea. So we're a three-piece with Henry, Stingo, and I. We played a bunch of shows. And one day, Sting and I get a session with a guy called Mike Howlett, who was a bass player in a band that was big in Europe at the time, kind of also fading like Curved Air, called Gong, solo project. And so I'm the drummer, and Sting's the bass player, and the guitarist on the session is this triple-scale guy, super fancy, and we all like a little nervous. Andy Summers just walked in the room, and he is the guy in London, the first call guitarist. His vocabulary on the guitar is bigger than anything. And so we cut an album, actually, with Mike Howlett. And then we ended up doing a gig in Paris with Mike Howlett, and for which he was short of songs. We had a couple of our Crap Police songs in there. And this is before Sting started writing. And then we had a gig at the Marquee Club, as the Police. And Andy was in the room. And he jumps on and he knew two of our songs. And so after that, just by accident, and this is the real magical part, I'm getting off a tube, London Underground, and at the same time Andy's getting off. And hey, what you doing? Hey, Stewart, let's get a coffee. And he sits me down and says, Stewart, look, you and that bass player, you got something. But you need me in the band, and I accept. Andy hates that story, but it's very Andy. And I go back to Sting and say, well, Andy wants to join the band. Whoa, are you kidding? Come on, yes, yeah, what are you waiting for? You know, Sting absolutely out. He's in the band. We have an actual musician. Are you kidding? Come on. And I say, look, this guy is too expensive. He's getting paid a lot of money for doing sessions. He's working 3 or 4 days a week. We can't afford him. He'll do 3 gigs with us and quit. We got no record company. We got nothing. And I told Andy, we got the record company, that's me. Management, that's me. Road crew, that's me and you. And so but Andy was persistent and Sting was persistent. Okay, all right, okay. And so Andy's in the band. We're now 4-piece. We got 2 guitars. But Andy tells me right away, I'm going to get rid of that other guy. I accept your, joining your band, provided I get rid of the other guy. Well, we actually played maybe 2 or 3 shows with 2 guitarists, and we went to do a recording. And long story short, Henry left. We are still all really good friends. And he went on to join a band called Wayne County and the Electric Chairs that actually was above us in the hierarchy, and we ended up opening for the Electric Chairs a couple times in Holland. So everybody was happy with the arrangement. Meanwhile, Andy can play some chords. He had a musical education and a harmonic sophistication that suddenly Sting is like writing songs. It was the first time. He had a couple songs from his other band, but they weren't much. But as soon as Andy joined the band, now Sting can write songs with a harmonic, adventure that was beyond. And we started to get like complicated chords and complicated sounds. And then Andy got his plug board, and that's when the Police was really born. Was when Andy joined the group. Okay. Part 3. Let's finish the story about Henry Padovani. 30 years later, we do a reunion tour. And we're playing Paris at the Stade de France, 80,000 people, 2 nights. And Henry Padovani is technically French. He's actually Corsican, but that makes him French. And so we got this idea, how about if we get Henry up on stage for the encore when we play the Stade de France? And Sting and I are scheming, how are we going to get this past Andy? Because we discovered something very charming, that Andy was a little insecure about Henry. What? But we couldn't believe it, but we were both very charmed by this, actually. So we timed it just carefully, after a really great show, everybody's feeling so how about we get Henry? Sure, fine. Done. Okay, come the night. Now, Henry has had a career where he joined the Electric Chairs, then he became a record company executive, and right now he's on French Idol, and he's a huge television celebrity in France right now. So we play the show, and it's a big show, and it's a great show, and we're rocking along, and we come to that encore. One more little side thing. Henry has a daughter, who at that time when we played this show was maybe 16, 17. I don't know if any of you have kids, but you know what that 16, 17-year-old looks like. And she's been hearing her whole life about Dad played with a big band, and if I hear the story about whatever, and she's, that 16-year-old attitude about her dad, God, drags her to the show. And so come the end of the set, she looks around and her dad's, where's Dad? Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring on the stage Henry Padovani. Oh, Jesus. This had been a good show, real good response. But at that moment, when Henry walked out, a Frenchman, a founding member of the police, was French. 80,000 people screaming like I've never heard before or since. On flashbulbs going, wow. This is what it's really like. Holy crap, we played the song. He does really well. He's been practicing. And the song only had E-A-D. I forgot one of the best bits of the story. So, the night before the show, Andy's selling his book. He's got, he's doing an event the night before the show. It's kind of a book launch thing, and there's him taking pictures of famous people are coming in. And one of the famous people who comes striding in is Henry Padovani with a film crew, making a documentary about himself. And he's there, he comes in, hey Andy, here's a big shot of me and Andy. And he's got his camera guys like that, hey, here's my good buddy, hey! Andy isn't that kind of guy. And so anyhow, next day at sound check, I arrive, the car pulls up to this enormous, whoa, and I can hear the sound. Henry's in the house. And so I get up to the stage, and I saw the thing that I really didn't want to see, which is Henry with a guitar going like, bang, on Andy's amps. And the crew are all standing, is this guy in the band? Is this okay? So just that moment, Stingo arrives and says, Henry, look, last night you showed up at Andy's thing, he's a little upset about it, I think you need to, Andy, we are friends. And just at that moment, we had these hatches, these kind of like gangways to get onto the stage, and we could see the top of Andy's head coming up the little hatch thing like that. Oh shit! Suddenly Sting and I each have urgent business below decks. And I don't know what happened up there. So, we play the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Henry Padovani. Really exciting. Okay, now I'm finally almost done with this story. Next morning, the French newspapers, big, huge, picture of the police at the Stade de France. They always, 200,000 people. They always exaggerate this stuff. We counted the tickets. And big picture, and there's Sting. There's me. Oh, there's Henry. And there's Andy's elevator. Any questions?
That's a great story. I didn't hear that one before.
Be careful with your next question.
Yeah. Well, that's a good leap of decades. As I said to you a couple of days ago, I just want to jump into the music part of it from your perspective. I said to Stewart that I felt what was the big disappointment for me was his conversation in the musical dialogue, sort of going away from pop music. You weren't in a band that was releasing hit records. I'm like, well, gosh, that was the reason that I listened to the Police. I remember where I was when I heard the band. A lot of people say they remember when when Kennedy was shot and all that stuff. I was a kid, I was too young, but I remember when I heard the Police, and I was like, and go back to what you were saying about Andy being able to bring the big ears into it. I heard, because I was a big Return to Forever fan, so I heard the music, I heard I heard the voicings, and I heard this rhythm, and I heard this energy, and it really changed my world. And my girlfriend at the time, who I was at her house, she was wondering why I wasn't paying any attention to her. I said, "Are you here?" Because she was the Police fan. I wasn't hip to the Police. And I said, "Do you hear what's going on?" And she said, "Yeah, I really like that song." I said, "But do you hear what's going on here?" And she said, I'm paraphrasing now. She said, "Yeah, they're a really great band." I said, "No, this is what it's about. It was popular music with brains and energy. It was all the things that I really liked." So what I was saying about Sting going and doing his thing, it was all great and stuff. I'm like, well, shucks. I wish I could hear Stewart, because he just changed the conversation.
Sting says that all the time. Just hear Stewart.
It just changed the conversation. I think everyone in here would agree. Where are you going? You could have just asked me. You made me coffee. I can give you water. Right?
I carry my own water.
All right. So I'm sure we would all agree this man changed the conversation. It was just revolutionary. And I think a lot of times when people say, "Well, I love Copeland," and they try to play like him, you hear the riffs, you hear the fills, but it's how the man interprets the tune, how he played the tune, how he heard it. And that's always amazing from that position.
Well, what amazes me is when I hear the cover band playing not just the drum part, but the drum overdubs too.
Yeah.
All at the same time. I never did that.
What was that like? What's
Probably won't succeed.
Keep the questions short, too.
You can always use that help. I love that.
Okay, on the mic.
Your name and the question.
Hello, I'm Ronald from College Radio Leeuwarden in the Netherlands.
Uh-huh. I didn't hear that, but welcome. The mic stand probably made by one of these companies here. There's this device that you turn that counterclockwise and the mic goes up to where your head is at. Stand like a man. There you go.
Well,
Raise up that microphone.
I'm feeling a bit like the high school student.
There you go. You're looking much better now.
Thank you. I'm feeling a little bit like a high school student you were talking about earlier.
You don't look like a high school student to me.
Because my only question I have, would you sound a guitar?
Sure. While I'm signing this guitar, has anyone else got a question? Yeah.
And let's hold any more signings until this is over. He'll be around for a while, okay? But I want to get some questions that can be enlightening to folks out here.
Anyway, I already signed all your stuff. Okay, next question.
Next up.
Hey, Stewart, my name's Mark. I just
Hey,
want to
Mark.
ask, how did Animal Logic come together? And when did they get back together?
Great band. Animal Logic was a band designed on paper by Stanley Clark and myself. We'd known each other for years. We go way back. I can sort of remember. Anyhow, and we said, let's make a band. And make it a pop band with clever players. And we found a singer-songwriter called Deborah Holland. And what was interesting about her was that her songs were very intellectual, and they spoke to the a woman's experience in a way which wasn't crooning, wasn't weeping, wasn't apologizing, wasn't reproaching. She's an intelligent woman with an intelligent view of life, which I thought was a really cool thing to have, not a sex kitten chick singer. Let's have a brain with a beautiful voice and has something to say, and that was Deborah Holland. She had those really great songs. We recorded a couple albums. The hitch was that right at that time, Stanley and I both suddenly, individually, got hot as film composers, and suddenly we didn't have time to be playing in a rock band. And so it was a very rare instance where the band...
Yeah, I guess my question is, well, sometimes when people will say, well, I don't know how to get my band, people talk about my band, and I'll cite something from your book. I'll be, well, Stewart Copeland, he got people talking about him. You created your own press, I think, if I'm not mistaken, for Curved Air, right? Yep. Reading your book. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that. I think you talked about yourself to a newspaper or something like that.
Okay, this was a bit of shameless self-promotion.
Yes.
And I want every aspiring musician to listen close, because you must have no shame when it comes to self-promotion. You need to put yourself forward. And this is how I did it in 1970, whatever it was. And I was in a band called Curved Air, and every city we played in, I would drop a letter into the letterbox. Each one written in a different handwriting, on different paper, with a different literary style, such as, I saw Curved Air, they were brilliant, who's the drummer? I was most beguiled by Curved Air last night, and was intrigued to discover, in all kinds of different styles, with spelling mistakes, hopefully without spelling mistakes, on perfume, stationery, on a bit of notepaper, and I would drop one or two in every, town that we played in. And sure enough, on Melody Maker, these efforts bore fruit. My first piece of ink, my first time I saw myself in a newspaper article, my name, S-T-E-W-A-R-T, and however the fuck you spell the rest of it, was in Melody Maker. What kind of drumsticks does Stewart Copeland use? And I got a call. We got a question from Melody Maker. They got their Any Questions page. What do you got for us? So the answer to the question, and I've still got this article as my first piece of ink, was, what kind of drumsticks does Stewart Copeland use? I was born in 1952. And a whole story, which they printed the whole story. And let this be a lesson to you young folk, that you can pull yourselves up by your own bootstraps.
Hi, Stewart. I'm Steve. I did grow up during the hippie movement, and I saw Korn, I saw Moon, Bonham, Ginger Baker, and I'm just curious how your style is so unique to any other drummer.
So was theirs, all those guys you mentioned.
I know.
We've got to sort of evacuate this room quickly. If Stewart hangs around, he'll be easy to find, and you can pick it up, sign whatever later. But thank you, everybody, and thank you, Stewart.